graphing quadratic equations. And I know once we hear the words graphing, we just smile and we're so excited, and that's probably not at all what you're actually doing. All right, so graphing quadratics, we actually introduced ourselves to it in 8.1. Here we're just actually going to graph it. Oh, I got a Snapchat. So it's like a continuation of 8.1. Let's go ahead and look at this first example for our warm-up though. Okay, so here it says a sequence is shown, and in this problem what you kind of want to do is make like a little table. Okay, kind of think of it as a table. Okay, and if it shows you right here f of 1 equals 3, so that means the x value, or in this case n, because that's the variable used, is 1. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Basically what you have to do is you have to plug in 1 into all of these and figure out if it gets the answer of 3. And if more than 1 does, then you plug in 2 and so you get 6 and so on. So f of 1, if we do 2 times 3 and 1 minus 1, we know that's 0. And 3 to the 0 power is 1. So that'd be 2 times 1, which is just 2. So A is not an option. Okay, so then we go to the next one. And we have 3 times 2, and it'll be 1 minus 1. And same thing with the 3 to the 0 power. This will be 2 to the 0 power, and they both equal 1. So you're left with 3. That's an option, so let's just keep checking. Plug in 1, and here you're going to have 3 times 2 to the first power, which is just same thing as 3 times 2, which is 6, so that's not an answer. And last but not least, you plug in 6 to the first power and you just get 6, so also not an answer. So B is our answer. We would color that in. All right, so let's jump into this. Recap, we talked about how to find the axis symmetry, and that's negative b over 2a. To find the vertex, you plug in the x value, okay, into the function, and then we're going to make a table today. Okay, so we're going to start with the most basic parabola, or quadratic, and I like to say this is the common white girl. I know it sounds weird. Oops, do it all the time. Okay. Because it is as basic as you can get. So this is the common white girl of quadratics. Okay, so first step, we're going to find the axis of symmetry. Okay, and I'm going to move this over real quick because it's in my way now. Okay, so we got to figure out what A, B, and C are. And you really only need to figure out what A and B are, but we're just going to go over this again. A is always with the x squared, B is always with the x, and C is always with the number. And there's no number, so it's 0. There's no just x, so it's 0. And the number in front of x squared is 1. Okay, so the axis of symmetry is negative b over 2a. So you plug in 0, you plug in 1, and 0 divided by any number is 0. So our axis of symmetry is 0, which is where the graph will fold in half, so we put that in the middle row. Then we're going to find the vertex. Okay, and when we plug in, or when we find 0, we're going to plug that into the equation. So we have x equals 0, we're plugging it into here, so y equals 0 squared, which is 0. So our vertex is 0, 0. And our axis of symmetry is x equals 0. And in our last notes, I asked you a few questions. I want to ask you the same thing. Does this open up or does it open down? Well, A is positive. There's no negative in front of the x squared, so this is going to go open up. If it's opening up, that means these values should increase and these values should increase. Although I threw a down arrow. So increase, increase. Okay, so now we're just going to calculate values, and we're just going to do like -1 and -2 because it's going below 0, and 1 and 2. Now since this is the axis of symmetry, it's where the graph cuts itself in half. So that means -1 and 1 should have the same answer, and -2 and 2 should have the same answer. So let's just go through and check. If you plug 1, because you're plugging it into the y, or into the x squared to solve for y, so you'd have 1 squared, and 1 squared is 1. If you plug 2 into the x, you get 2 squared, which is 4. So right now we have the 0, we have 1, and we have 2 is 4. Then you're going to plug -1 in, and we got to be careful with this because this is where a mistake happens. This is -1. You square it, so you get 1, and -2 squared is 4. So as we talked about, these two are symmetric, these are symmetric, they're the same values. And they increased, okay? So they increased from 0 to 4. Since the graph is going up, the values off of this vertex should increase and increase. If it was opening down, the values off the vertex should decrease. And by values, I mean the y values. Okay, so we have these 5 points. We can go ahead and graph it. Bear with me, I'm not very good at graphing on here. Okay, and then we're going to throw it back, and I guess I shouldn't say throw it back because that's a thing on TikTok, and it's about a dance move. So we're going to do a throwback of domain and range. So if you remember, domain is x and range is y, and I'm saying what values, I'm going to ask the values, what values can't you get? Well, for the domain, there aren't any values you can't get. So it's all real numbers, okay? In the range, you can't go any lower than this. So the lowest value you can get is 0, and you can get everything greater than it. So you're literally writing y, because it's y, is greater than or equal to 0. All right? And then the last question I'm going to ask you, is there a max or min? And there's a minimum, and you're going to tell me what y value that's occurring at, and that y value is 0. All right, so that is the most basic of a quadratic we can get. It is our common way, girl. Okay, so we're going to go on to problems a little bit more difficult, but they're not too bad. We only have 2 more examples, so I am going to do this entire note packet. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me. I will do more, that's fine. Because the big thing we have issues with is negative, so we're going to put a highlighter mark right there and be careful. Okay. And actually, I might change number 3 just to put that negative out in front of you again. Okay, so first step is to find the axis of symmetry. And the second step is to find the vertex. So what I'd like you to do after we find A, B, and C is to find the axis of symmetry and the vertex on your own. So if you remember, A goes with x squared, B goes with x, and C is a number. Okay? So the number or coefficient in front of the x squared is -1. There's no value with just x, so that's 0. And C is 4 because it's the number. All right, go ahead and find the axis of symmetry and the vertex, or try to on your own. Restart the video once you get stuck or when you get to that point. All right, so pause the video now. All right, now that you restarted the video, let's jump into this. B is 0, so we get 0, and it's 2 times -1, which means x equals 0. 0 divided by any number is 0. So then we're going to plug in 0 into this equation, what we're given. So you get -0 squared plus 4. Now let's talk about something, even though this is 0. You have to do the order of operations. Remember that. PEMDAS. Okay, so you have to do the exponent first. Okay, so you get 0. And then you would take care of this. This is kind of like having, oops, that's not what I want to write, sorry. Although you can't have a -0, it's kind of like -1 times 0 plus 4. That's what you have. So you would have to multiply this first and then add the 4, which turns out to just be 0 plus 4, so it's 4. So our vertex is 0, 4. And we have -1 and -2 because those are points below 0, and 1 and 2 because those are points above 0, if you want to say it that way. Okay, and then the last question I'm going to ask you is, does this open up or does this open down? Okay, if it's A is positive, it's opening up, and if A is negative, it's opening down. So this is going down. Since it's opening down, it's taking on this shape right here, which means as you come off this vertex, your y values are going to decrease. So my y value should be decreasing. Okay. If they're not, we did something wrong. Okay. So let's go through this and be very, very, very careful of what I'm saying, and be very careful with the negative. Okay. So we have negative parenthesis 1 squared plus 4. And the reason it's 1 in here is because you're only plugging into this x. Okay. That negative just stays there by itself. 1 squared is 1. So you get -1 plus 4, which turns out to be 3. That is lower than 4, so we're doing the right thing. So now we have the point of 0, 4, and we have the point of 1, 3. Okay, if we plug in 2, we get negative parenthesis 2 squared plus 4. Once again, the 2 is getting placed to the x. The negative is sits there. Okay, 2 squared is 4, so we have negative 4 plus 4, which gives us 0. Okay. Oops, sorry, I did that way off. Back up. At 2, it's 0. Oops, not 4. Okay, now these answers should be the same, but we're just going to go through them again. So you have negative 1 squared plus 4. Negative 1 squared is 1. The negative just sits there on the outside. So you get negative 1 plus 4, which is 3. These answers should be the same, and they are. And they're decreasing off of this vertex. If you plug in negative 2, remember we're plugging it into the negative x squared plus 4, the equation right up here. The negative just sits there. I put whatever the x value is in parentheses, square it, and add 4. So I'm squaring negative 2. Negative 2 times negative 2 is 4, but that negative just sits there. So you get negative 4 plus 4, which is 0. These match up, and it's decreasing. And voila, wow, that's really, really poorly graphed. We have all the points we need to make our parabola. Now remember, if I'm moving too quick, you can pause the video and then catch back up that way. There's no problem with that. So let's fill in the blanks below and go over the information we have. First off, we got the axis symmetry is 0, and the vertex has a y value of 4. So axis symmetry is x equals 4. Let's highlight it better. Our vertex is right here. And let's just ask the max and min. Does it have a max or a min? Well, it has a maximum, and at what y value? The y value is 4. So if you ever notice, these two answers should be the same. You determining min and max depends if it opens up or down. If it opens down, it's going to have a max. Okay. Range, or domain, sorry. Domain is the x value. So I'm going to give you a hint right here. Domain for quadratic equations in Algebra 1 will always be all real numbers. And then the range will either be y is greater than or y is less than or equal to. Always with the or equal to. So we ask ourselves, is there a max or a min? Well, since there's a max, that means 4 is the highest y value and everything's below it. So since everything's below it, that's saying less than, and we can get 4, so we have to put the equal sign underneath of it, 4. Okay, so that is that problem. Now on number 3, I'm going to change it. And I know this looks like a lot is going on, and there's a lot of calculations, but I promise you, you're very capable of doing this. Okay, so I don't know how it's going to turn out, but I am going to make this negative x squared. Okay, so I'm doing that because I want to watch and I want to go over this negative thing, because I have noticed a lot of issues in years past with this, so we might as well be proactive. So a is with x squared, b is with x, and c is with the number. Okay, so go ahead. I want you to figure out what those 3 values are. All right, since I put the negative in front of there, a is negative 1, b is 2, and c is negative 1. So first step is to find the axis of symmetry. And then second step is to find the vertex. And then our third step that I made up that I didn't write in there, I want you to figure out, does it open up or down? And I'm going to write all this stuff in here. Okay, so I want you to try to get as far as you can on this problem without me, and then start the video when you get stuck. And if you want to pause it and try to go farther again, and then restart it, you can. Okay, you can kind of like jump it step by step. You try a step and then I do it, and then stop it, and then you try a step and stop it. Okay, that is an option. Okay, so you have to work with what works for you. Everybody's different, if that made any sense. So we have to kind of figure out our own thing of how to do this, okay? Not an easy situation, but we're all very capable. So go ahead and pause the video and do this problem as much as you can. So pause the video now. All right, now that you restarted the video, I'm going to go through the steps. Again, if you want to pause it step by step so you can try to do this on your own, that would be awesome. So b is positive, and the opposite, because that's what it's saying, negative is an opposite. The opposite of positive 2 is negative 2. And then we're going to take 2 times negative 1, and that gets us negative 2 over negative 2. And a negative times a negative is a positive, so I'm going to write that out and 2 divided by 2 is 1. So right now, scroll down, we have the x's symmetry as x equaling 1. Once you find that, I'm going to step this out with step 1, step 2. Okay, you're going to find the vertex, and so you're going to plug in your answer from the vertex into the original equation. I'm going to rewrite the original equation right here, just to show it to you. So we have negative 1 squared plus 2 times 1 minus 1. All right, order of operations. Once again, order of operations. Remember PEMDAS. This negative is after squaring it. So I'm going to drop down the negative, and 1 squared is 1. 2 times 1 is 2, and then minus 1. So negative 1 and 2 gives you 1, minus 1 is 0. So our vertex is the coordinate point of 1, 0, just to show it to you. So we got this, which is right there, and then we found the 0, which gives us this right here. Okay, and then the next question I'm going to ask you, is it opening up or down? And remember, if A is a positive, it opens up, and if A is a negative, it opens down. Well, A is a negative value, so it's going to go down. So that means as you go from these values, what should your y values be doing off this vertex? Well, as it goes left and right, your y value should be decreasing. So I'm going to write that here just so you can think of it. Your y values should be decreasing. If they don't, something's wrong, okay? The x value is going to use is 2 and 3, and negative 1 and negative 2, and it doesn't matter. Ooh, not negative 1 and negative 2. What am I doing? What am I doing? You can do those, but they aren't a unit off, so they wouldn't match up with a 2 and 3. So 0 and 1. Okay, so let's start with 2 and 3 and then do 0 and 1 just because that's the path we've been going. So if you plug 2 into here, remember we have y equals negative x squared plus 2x minus 1. And right now we have a vertex of 1, 0. Knowing that this graph is going to go up and down, so it should be heading this way and not this way. We're going to plug 2 into x, which we leave the negative there. So we do 2 squared, 2 times 2 minus 1. You're going to notice I'm going to run out of some room here right now, so just work with me. Okay, so negative 2 squared, not how you think of it. How do you think of it? Well, you think of it as 2 squared, and then you tack on the negative. So negative 4, so negative right there. 2 times 2 is positive 4 minus 1. I'm out of room, so I went from here to down here. Negative 4 plus 4 is 0. Minus 1 is negative 1. So we have the point of 2, negative 1, and it went down, so we're in the right way. Now these two answers, 0 and 2, should line up. So let's go ahead and just do 0. I lied. Let's do 0 right now to check. So we'd have negative 0 squared, which is just 0. 2 times 0, which is just 0, minus 1. So we have 0 plus 0 minus 1, which is just negative 1. So we have a point right there, all opening down and symmetric across this line. Remember, this is the axis symmetry right here. So everything should fold over. That's the axis symmetry of x equals 1. Okay, then we're going to plug in 3. And we're going to do negative parenthesis 3 squared plus 2 times 3 minus 1. Okay, we do the 3 squared first and tack down the negative, or drop down the negative. So negative 9, 2 times 3 is 6 minus 1. Okay, notice how there's a negative here. I did not do negative 3 squared and get positive 9. That needs to be negative. It's the only way it's going to make it open down. Okay, so negative 9 plus 3 is negative 3 minus 1 is negative 4. My points are still dropping in value. We're at 3, negative 4, so we're doing the right thing, which means this point right here should be negative 4. So let's check. Negative 1 squared times 2 times 1 minus 1. Okay, if you do this 1 squared, you get 1. The negative drops down, so we get negative 1 plus 2 minus 1. All right, and I made a mistake. This should be negative 1. This should be negative 1. This should be negative 1. All right, so let's fix that. So let's re-go over that. All right, so negative 1 squared is 1. The negative drops down, it's negative 1. The reason this should be negative 1 is because we're going down in values, and I didn't put the negative there for some reason. They're going to do 2 times negative 1, which is minus 2. Not plus minus. Don't do it. I already see some of you doing it when you're not supposed to. We're over that. We're big kids now. Okay. -1 and -2 is -3. -1 is -4, which we were right. So everything's symmetric. We draw our parabola, and voila, we have it done. Okay. So let's go over something. And I'm going to keep with going to max and min next because that's what we kind of did in the last one. Does it have a max or min? Well, it has a max because it opens down. So it has a maximum, and that maximum y value is always the same as the vertex. And just to check, right here, highest y value is 0. Okay. Domain for quadratics is always, always, always all real numbers because it's gonna keep going left and it's gonna keep going right. So it's gonna get all x values. Okay. Range, the highest value is 0. So everything's below this. So everything from here on down is below. So that means y is less than or equal to 0. All right, that is graphing. It's a lot, and I know we don't like it. Please get a hold of me. I can always record myself doing more problems. You know, I love to talk, so stay safe, stay healthy. Ask questions. Bye.